It's a brand new house. What could possibly go wrong? It's a bad idea to engage these builders on your own without representation.
What value does having an agent with new construction even hold?
I don't want to scare the shit out of buyers, but I want to scare the shit out of buyers a little bit because it's not a sandbox that you want to go into with these builders. You really need guidance because you sign that document, you are going to be beholden.
You're spending money on a brand new house.
It
There is
should
no
be.
detail too small.
These community issues are super important because once you get in, very hard to get out.
Oh, you want a new construction because it's new and perfect?
It's not.
Let me show you.
Jen's getting sued after this episode. There's no doubt. All right, welcome back to Millennium Up. So this week we are going to be talking about new construction.
Yes. The things that you don't know and the things they don't tell you.
They don't tell you. And this is something a lot of people don't understand, but real estate agents in general handle what's called resale. So those are homes that have already been built, they've already been occupied, and then they go to the next buyer. That is resale. New construction is just what it sounds like. Builders building houses, and there's never been anyone before. And there are usually specific agents that are not, who don't play in the sandbox we play in. There are specific agents who just sell new construction. So we're going to talk a little bit about how some of the mistakes that we see buyers make when it comes to new construction. Innocently. But there is some predatory practices out there that we want to give everyone a heads up on and how we can best help them.
Yes, I will say I had a good experience with a with a building company once, but that is not the normal.
No, actually, I would push back on that. Okay. Most builders, if the process is followed in the right way, most builders are actually great to work with. Yes.
However, I would say as far as where it comes from, from obtaining a client in the first place. So I think where it starts is, so good job explaining the building thing and how people work.
Thank you, Jen.
You're very welcome, Seth. But so these agents that are I wouldn't say that they're contracted with these builders, but they work with these builders as like the primary agent for the houses that are being built. They have what's called procurement. And
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
They have what is called procurement.
There we go. Yeah, slow down.
So
too much Wawa coffee.
Too much Wawa coffee, not enough meds.
Podcast fueled by Wawa.
Yes. Sponsor us. I love you. I'm from Delco. I remember your first store. Oh my God, there I go. All right. So
I'm sorry. Your brain
procurement.
meds. I keep forgetting your brain meds are on back order.
back order, not covered, whatever you want to freaking call it. I don't freaking know. They work for the builder. Let
me interrupt you one more time.
Do you really think that's best?
All right, continue.
Okay. Yeah, what's called procurement. So the agent works for the builder. That is very important. So I want you to take mental note of that. I'm going to walk you through a scenario. You're on the internet. You may not have considered new construction before. You haven't really talked to your agent much about it, but you're like, oh, you know what? I want to go see this. You fill out your little form online of schedule a tour. You say, hey, realtor, I think we're actually going to be going to this place to go see it. Oopsie daisy.
That's a big mistake.
We no longer get to represent you.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? So with procurement, once the builder gets your information from you and not your agent, they now get to say that they procured you and got you in as the client without any assistance. So now they get to represent you. But keep in mind, a lot of people also think, I don't need an agent for new construction. What are they even going to do?
Yes, you do.
Keep listening. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So they get your information. You think, well, I guess I don't really need an agent. You feel bad for your agent. Whoopsie doozy, sorry. But you go in. But keep in mind, the agent, while they say works for you, they work for the builder first.
Yes.
They work for you second and barely. So they're always going to do what is in the best interest of the builder because that is who they really work for.
Yeah, so in the state of Pennsylvania, which is called dual agency, where an agent represents both the buyer and the seller.
And some states do not allow that.
And a lot of states don't allow it. And I think that as time goes on, there's going to be less and less of it because there's just too much of a conflict of interest. And you guys can imagine the conflict, right? I have to represent the builder's best interest and the buyer's interest at the same time. But those two things converge often in a real estate transaction, especially when you're negotiating about price or terms or conditions. In the state of Pennsylvania, they are still allowing listing agents or builder agents to represent buyers. And yeah, when they get your information, that's considered procurement because then you can't put all your information on a website or stop in a model home. And that kind of makes sense too, because it's like, I register on a website and it's like, oh, wait, but I have this realtor. So I can see the point that the builder is making, But from a practitioner standpoint, it's a bad idea to engage these builders on your own without representation.
So you might think, like, why wouldn't they just tell you that up front? Because there is a commission amount. And if they get to represent you, they get double the commission. They get both commissions versus having to give half of it to your agent. Now we can go into what value does having an agent with new construction even hold? A lot. I've done a new construction deal. So when I say that I had a really good experience with this building company, I will say my buyers, and it's just common sense, like even like just pop into a model home. Boom, you risk not being represented by your agent. You fill out that form online. Boom, you risk not being represented by your agent innocently. And it's because we didn't have that conversation with you to warn you about that. And that's what this episode is for. But my buyers did something similar because we had taken new construction off of the menu, and then they did, and they're very like quick moving, they're very decisive, and I loved that so much. They're wonderful people, and they happened to find something. They're like, oh yeah, no, I already reached out to them. You're a good thing they were helping. And I was like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But they were great. I did follow up. I said, how long ago did you talk to them? She said, and I talked to her earlier this afternoon, and I just crossed my fingers, held my breath, and reached out to her myself and said, hi, I'm Jen Anuski. I represent blah. Sorry, she may not have mentioned it. We haven't necessarily had this conversation, whatever. And she was like, you're good. I put you in as their agent, and I was still able to represent them. So that was okay.
And again,
but not everybody's going to do that.
And this is not about shitting on builders. Like, builders are incentivized to do the things that they need to do. Most builders, like actually in process and in transaction, are pretty decent to work with, because we talked about on another episode about how flippers, if they work locally, they want to maintain their reputation. Builders generally don't want to be seen as a pain in the ass, because when the market shifts and they really need buyers to come in, they're going to want those relationships with the realtors.
And I'll say too, as far as new construction goes, while we're talking about who's getting paid what, just know, like, your realtor is doing this for your behalf. We do not make so even if we do get to represent you at the end of the day and at that settlement table, the builder's agent is still getting so much more, because there's some pros to working with new construction where if you use like their lender versus yours, they'll give you a massive incentive off of the purchase of your house, or you get like a free deck, or you like whatever. They give huge incentives, sometimes upwards of like $10,000 off, $16,000 off, whatever. That comes off of what's called the base price. And we don't get paid off of what you end up paying for that house. We get paid off of the base model, and any incentives that you get gets taken off of our base price. So we're looking out for you entirely. This isn't necessarily the biggest payday for us necessarily. It is for them, but we just want to make sure that you're represented. Yeah,
and that's the other thing. I'm glad you brought up price, because that is the bait and switch. So you'll have somebody who's like looking for a house up to $400,000 or $500,000 because there's a really shiny object. They put it on Realtor.com.
Starting
Yeah, it says $500,000. It's, oh yeah, but like, you like a roof and walls and a window, but it's
doors.
Like, but you want door knobs? Oh, that's an upcharge.
You want poles on your drawers?
Yeah. Oh, you want a banister? Sure, we'll get you that. Faucets. The price that you see online is not the price that you will eventually pay for the house, because there's all kinds of bells and whistles, and some of them are awesome. Like, you can get what are called bump outs, where you can move the floor plan out a little bit, add a foot here, add a foot there, certain types of flooring, lighting packages. You can do the gourmet kitchen, which has got the hood and it's got the things in there that'll make you feel like you're.
But that's not the price that you're looking at.
That's not the price you're looking at.
And that's not the price that we're going to get paid on either. We'll give you the most honest advice, because if we're giving you guidance of, is this upgrade worth it? Just know that we're not seeing any cash for any upgrade that you get or that we advise to or not advise to. It's just we get the base price, or if not less.
Let's go through the process of like where realtors can really help and why. Yeah. And I don't want to scare the shit out of buyers, but I want to scare the shit out of buyers a little bit, because it's not a sandbox that you want to go into with these builders, because they're just pumping these things out, and what they're really trying to do is get as many sales as possible.
Yes.
So I don't want buyers getting steamrolled by the process. I think, advising on price certainly is. Now, builders set their own pricing, and they let capitalism reign. They let the market decide. If they're overpriced, they're going to sit. If they're underpriced, it's the same as with any other regular house. The contract for builders in some states might be this way, but in Pennsylvania, they're not required to use, in fact, rarely use the state's like boilerplate Pennsylvania Association of Realtor
and
document.
It's a lot of pages.
It's a lot of pages. It's formatted differently. It's worded differently. There's other stipulations because it's a brand new house. There's construction language in there and all that.
There's things that you are and are not allowed to do during the time
During
of
it-
construction. They all vary.
by
So
builders because they have their own lawyers write them. So you really need guidance because you sign that document, you are going to be beholden. And frankly, like they're building you a house, like you should be in bed with them. And it's great. If you want to build a house and you want to engage one of these builders, that's awesome. But you need to know exactly what the terms and conditions are.
You also need to know what questions to ask. You only know as much as you know, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
so having
I mean,
an agent to look over those documents, be able to ask the right questions, even if you are the person to be reading through every single line of that contract, there still may not be things that you know to ask about or
yeah, or the
understand.
context to understand. So I have a client right now out in Westchester, Pennsylvania, big houses. They really want a fence in their backyard. They don't even have a dog. I think they just want a fence. They just want to be able to fence in the yard. Maybe they don't like their neighbors, but they were unsure as to like what about fencing. And I knew it was a big thing for them. And we went out and we got through the entire appointment and I had it in my back pocket. I'm like, yeah, but what about fencing? Turns out this place doesn't allow fencing. Bye.
Imagine going through
All that and building a house and getting halfway through and there's studs in the air and they're putting up drywall and you're like, oh, I got to call the fencing person, and the building inspectors like, or the building guys there, he's, oh yeah, we don't allow fencing. There's also instances where kind of nitty gritty, but where there's municipal liens attached to each property. So sometimes when a builder goes in and says, hey, I want to take this farm and make it into a big development, the township doesn't have the money for the infrastructure, the water and running all the pipes and the sewer and everything like that. So what they'll do is they'll attach an individual lien, meaning an individual note to each lot that the seller has to, or the buyer, the builder, or I'm sorry, not the builder, the buyer. Yeah, the buyer has to pay. So like in this one instance, there was a $57,000 note that the buyer had to pay off over 20 years. And like, getting in the nitty gritty of all that, that stipulation could very well have been buried in a contract, but I found it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not doing this to toot my own horn, but it's like there are certain stipulations. Another big one is pre-drywall inspections.
Before we go there, can I say one other thing that just has to do with lots?
Yes.
Before we go, while we're outside, before we go inside. So it made me think of when I was having initial meetings about my friend's new construction purchase. They were looking to get a unit and did. That was backed up to a tree line. And somebody might go see that and be like, oh my God, that's so great. And I get to have trees out back. So things that they didn't even think to ask were, are those trees going to stay there? Or what are the building plans like as you go on? Because they were getting one of the first like row of houses. They were still going to, and I asked them like, how long are you going to be building for? Are they going to be having like bulldozers or whatever else, and excavators outside?
What phase are they in?
Yeah. And then if you think that you're going to be getting something because it has like at least like a nice little like backyard, is it always going to be a backyard? Is it always going to be like that? What are their plans for it? Are they taking that down to then expand and do more further on? It's not appealing. So they're not going to just offer up that information right off the bat, because people like to have a little tree line and cool, you have it now, but maybe you're not going to have that in 2 years and you wouldn't even think to ask. And then you're going to get real upset in 2 years when they're like, yeah, let's set it right here.
Yep.
And you didn't have anybody to catch that. So
yeah. The other thing is we also understand the intricacy, because a lot of these communities are now being built in HOA and condo communities. Even in resale, where it's not new construction, we see all kinds of things come up. So we know the questions to ask. And the builder's not like beholden. And I don't think it's like malicious. I just think sometimes the builder's just so busy doing deals that they just don't think it's really a concern. Like I had one where you're not allowed to put sheds on property, but the garage was like basically a shoebox. And he's like, well, where am I going to put all my like yard equipment and all that stuff? And we got all the way down the road here. And before we signed, we asked about sheds because I had shown them other houses where they were like, I need storage for this, that, or the other. So outside and just these HOA issues, these community issues are super important, because once you get in, very hard to get out without sacrificing your deposit. So are we allowed to go inside now, Jen?
now we're going inside.
Now we're going inside. So another thing that a lot of builders don't offer, but you can have written in, is what's called a pre-drywall inspection. So that's
actually sometimes it is written into the contract by like the standard, is that, because I caught this with my clients, is that it said no pre-drywall inspection.
Can you explain what a pre-drywall inspection is?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay.
Just like you would get a home inspection and have an inspector in to inspect all the components of the house, while it's getting built, you can have your inspector come in before the drywall goes up and be able to see any of the joists and the framework and make sure that the electrical is being run correctly and be able to see everything without drywall up. So pre-drywall inspection.
Our inspector has had horror stories where he was literally, they were just
I love seeing those on Instagram too. I love seeing inspectors putting up reels of new construction things of like, oh, you want a new construction because it's new and perfect?
It's not.
Let me show you. I'm like, oh, yes, please. If you are an inspector and you do that, keep going. Tag us in it.
So we had a client he had a pre-drywall inspection, but the builder said they were literally drywalling the house that day. And so they were pressuring him to run around the house and do it. And they started covering things up that he hadn't gotten to. And he literally was like snapping photos of open wiring, all kinds of unsupported joists, like all kinds of stuff in the house. That is a big one that you should definitely employ. And some builders will really push back about it. But most will allow it to happen because they want happy customers. They know their reputation is important, but most buyers have no idea. They're like, yeah, just like Jen said, it's a brand new house. What could possibly go wrong?
If you don't have somebody who's like working in your favor, because again, you're thinking of if this agent's working for the builder, it is a smoother transaction if there is no inspection and they don't have to call for anything and they get to skip over that part. Yeah. So it's appealing to them. But like I said, I was going through the contract and it was elected a no pre-wall. I said, so is this to say that they can't get one? She says, oh no, like you can, but you have to specifically say it.
But the default had it not elected.
And I said, okay, I would like to have that option open, but they make you like decide right then and there. Yeah. And I said, okay, I want you to have that option open. And then they give you only a small certain amount of time to do it.
Yeah, they give you small windows. And that makes sense too, baby. Because
like Pennsylvania contracts, same way with home inspections too.
Yeah, but it's builders have to keep they
have a deadline to meet.
And then they have logistics. They've got a lot of crews running around these sites and they just they can't have a property stalled for 20 days by buyers. And that's, I think, an understandable thing. And
it's also why they limit how many times you can go see the house while it's being built, because what they don't want is people, and this one I don't disagree with,
is liability.
Well, that and having a buyer come to see their house as it's getting built and be like, actually, no, I don't like that. Actually, change that. Actually, that's, and just,
They just don't want their crew slowed down either because
right.
they
have to deliver it by a certain time to you, and it's only slowing you down.
So I had a guy outside of Philly who he was a building estimator in his normal job, and he built a house, and he had it built. And you're right, they had a certain amount of visits. He crossed it out. I don't think he put like infinity, but he put like as many as I want. He's like, I live in the city, and this is about 40 minutes away. He's like, I'm not going to be here every day, but I want to be able to see the house that you're building for me. And he like looked that builder right in the eye, and she relented because he wanted to know what's going on. He didn't do a pre-drywall inspection because he's in buildings, literally builds massive buildings. So like he understands like what's going on. They'll only give you a certain amount, and their fun little thing is you have to go to the sales office and get the hard hat. It's totally a liability thing. Yeah, you're walking around a construction site and they don't have the insurance to allow just regular people walking around the site.
What we do is make sure that things are working on the same timeline. So the builder is also responsible for providing certain things to you throughout the process, and there are deadlines to be met, and that making sure that we're keeping everything on track for that too, so that you don't fall out of contract, you don't miss a deadline, and that also they don't miss a deadline. I think there was a time where I said, hey, like they are due this thing, do you have it? And I had to chase after it. I think it was like a nailing down the exact settlement date, I think is what it was. And they give a certain date of when they will be able to issue that to us. And they gave the runaround and we kept pushing it off. And I was really stern and was like, no, you need to get this to us because you are in contract now. And do you want to be in default? And just like being able to know that all these deadlines are still being met. So then I
feel like you don't have a very good feeling about building.
I have, listen, new construction can be good. I just think that there is like,
it's just different.
It's not enough that is being educated to people about it. Yeah. None of this stuff is being talked about. So long as it's all done responsibly, I don't have a problem with it. But there's just I have a trust level thing with it's not that they are lying to people. They are just withholding a lot of information.
I think they're also dealing with a lot of incomplete information. You have to remember, this isn't just a seller moving out of a house. There's logistics. They've got the drywall guy that needs to come in, and then they need an electrician to come in, and the plumber to come in, and then the tub installer, the tiler, and all that stuff. A lot of times what will happen is that these contractors are working on other sites. They're working at other properties. Things get delayed. So as you come in for a landing on these things, sometimes it can get pushed a week or two.
That's fine.
I always tell my buyers, I'm like, these are like guidelines. And yeah, we feel like we're getting jerked around. That's one thing. But a lot of times these builders are incentivized to build and get properties off the books, recorded, and so they can release their debts.
Just on team communication.
I get that.
So just if it's running behind, communicate with me like as early as you possibly can instead of giving runarounds. But
I have another thing about the inside. that I want to talk about.
Me too. What's yours? You go first.
No, you go first.
No, me.
I've talked a lot. I don't think yours is going to be mine though.
Okay.
Okay.
Mine kind of jumps to the end then. So there's 2 different walkthroughs you have.
Stop. That's too far down the road.
I told you. So I said you
Stop.
go first. Let's pull this. No, you go
Realtors
first.
also, guys, can advise on the design. I spent an hour and a half with one of my buyers basically designing the entire house. You can go in and say, hey, is it worth getting a lighting package? Is it worth getting this? What are the things you should, like one of those little things that no one ever thinks about. The electrical outlet in the ceiling of the porch for Christmas lights and that kind of thing. Like, it's that little stuff that a builder's never going to, it's like just a package deal.
That's like last week's episode of like return on investment for home improvement. Man, I'm not going to tell you you're going to get dollar for dollar, but I'll tell you what, that is worth the investment.
It's a $17 install versus probably a $400 install aftermarket, because you have to like wire.
Then you
and
got to
everything.
like open things up.
You have to
again
open
and
things
rework
up. You got to
things
cut
and-
everything open and all that stuff. So it's those little things that a realtor can advise you on what's worth it, what's not. Is it worth getting the princess suite, meaning adding a dedicated bathroom to one of the bedrooms, or what kind of flooring? Is it like the high-end flooring? Do you have dogs? Do you not have dogs? Like the type of thing where the finished basement, how much of the basement do you want to finish versus storage, like that ratio? So I will go to the design
These
center
things add
of
up
these builders.
really quickly.
And they do. And it's really about backing things in, but it's also about finishes. One of my clients says she has this awesome gray cabinets with a navy blue island with white countertops. It's sweet. And even
I
the
love this
exterior,
navy blue.
we picked the exterior of the house, picked the shingle color, like that type of thing.
That's so fun.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
was
The
fun.
Sims in real life.
It was required because she didn't really know, and her husband didn't really care. And so she's like, can you just go meet me over there and we can pick everything out? I said, sure, I'll
Yes,
come over.
it excite me so much.
I was thinking it was going to be like I come in and she'd ever, but we like literally like down on the ground with like tile samples and that kind of stuff. And that's not typical. But if you need that kind of guidance and you need to back into a certain price, then then an agent can be used for that.
Yeah, see, okay, that's where you get me to be on total gung-ho. I love new construction. 'Cause
Yes.
That's so much fun.
It was fun.
I did quick delivery, which, to define quick delivery, that's when they already have all of the plans made out. You can't make accommodations or adjustments because everything is already ordered. And
or built. But
Yeah.
sometimes the house is just sitting there and you just buy it.
the pro to it is that you get it sooner, so they know when it's going to be done versus fully customized and you're picking out everything. It could be, up to like a year.
Do you know why they do quick deliveries?
I mean, other than an obvious, like they get paid faster.
Usually,
Model homes?
Usually, it is a buyer who's already built the house and they default, or they
Oh, yeah.
and they decide they don't want it, and so you basically
That's what happened
adopt
with my
everyone.
clients.
That's
one.
it. You just adopt everyone. You adopt.
It's because somebody else already picked all the finishes and it's all already ordered and there and ready to be put in. So.
Yeah, and sometimes the builders just screw it. Let's just keep building houses. If they reach a time when they're stalled out and there's no other buyers buying, they'll just start building houses and they'll try to project what they think the market would want.
And typically it'll probably be right. Now do I get to skip a little bit further?
Yes,
to the end? Okay.
you are given permission, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you. In Pennsylvania, at least, you're in contract, you're allowed 2 walkthroughs. One is typically reserved for the day before settlement. The other one can be whenever you do so choose, but it gets a little bit more specific when you get to new construction. The last one is the one that the builder decides for you. So you have to go, at least with this instance, but it's usually the day of settlement before you go to settlement. But the one before that is, at least in our case, was 2 weeks before you do a walkthrough. It's when everything is finished. And you go through and it's the blue tape walkthrough. So you go through, you point out everything that is either wrong or damaged or needs to be fixed or whatever it is. They do their blue tape, they get painter's tape, mark all of the things that need to be addressed. They have the 2 weeks or whatever time is in that contract to turn that around, to correct those things. And then the day of settlement is for you to walk through and sign off that it is okay. And you literally have to sign.
Yeah.
And say, I consent that this is okay. My story with this, boy, oh boy, were there a lot of blue pieces of tape around the house. That first walkthrough, that's what it's for. There's no such thing as too many pieces of tape because that's when you want to actually call it out. And you're spending money on a brand new house.
Yeah.
There is no detail too small, in my opinion.
It should be dialed in. It should be good.
I'm not going to bore you with everything that we had called out, but, they're all valid. So then it was the day of settlement before we went. And this is where having a realtor really paid off because there were things, and I made sure to take note. And they also go through and they have carbon copy and write down also all of the things that are supposed to be corrected. And then we compare that the day of to make sure that all those things were addressed. But I also took my own notes of what we called out. So I'm going around, and there were things like they didn't put a bumper on the back on one of the walls where a doorknob was hitting into the wall and had already dented the wall.
Yeah.
The day, like right before we were going to settlement. There was also like paint that was on the counter. And we were like, are you kidding me? There were so many things that were like, this should not be the case. You're delivering this house today, and I can't even close this door properly.
You're a stickler, Jen. You're a stickler.
You should be getting what you're paying for.
That's true.
It's not like, this is where it differs between you're buying a house that's been lived in, and it's not going to be perfect.
They can be shitholes too.
You get to have way higher standards if it's something that is brand spanking new. You were the first person to be in this. Like, it was a little ridiculous.
It has to be perfect.
I won't say it was ridiculous. There were just things that should not have been the way they were as we're on our way to settlement. And I told them, I said, I'm not going to sign anything until I know that this is actually...
Did you want to talk about the 1-year warranty?
Go ahead.
No, you got it.
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
You said you were going to.
Okay. The nice thing about new construction, because the house has never been lived in, there's settlement that takes place, things break, things go. Most builders will offer what's called a 1-year warranty. And what that does is it allows in month 11, after you've taken ownership, for you to bring the builder back in, and you'd say, this doesn't work, this is crooked, this is loose, this is that. And there are limitations to it. But just keep in mind, when you build a house, it is going to settle. So a lot of times it'll be wall cracks, it'll be trim out of place. Not a lot, not like the house is falling down, but it'll be certain things that just happen just with gravity. Like I had a client where the track on one of the garage doors got loose because it was anchored wrong into the drywall. There's little stuff like that where they will come back and you get a punch list. So this is another time when you're a homeowner, you're not looking to buy or sell, you should call an inspector. So whenever I have a new construction client, I set a calendar invite for month 10. And month 10, I recommend my inspector go back in, and then let the inspector go in and find all the little defects. Then when the builder comes in, you just slide it across the table and say, this is all the stuff that needs to be fixed. And then they fulfill that warranty.
That's funny. I also set reminders on my calendar for probably like a week or two right before their first HOA payment is due, when they've never ever had to pay one because it's not taken with your mortgage payment. And a text to remind them, by the way, don't forget, first HOA payment is due. Don't forget to pay it.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about things like it was right before settlement, and something that like shouldn't have had to wait for a month was I saw one of the gutters. It was...
Wait, are you going back to pre-settlement?
I'm saying like some things you might notice afterwards, like after settlement.
Okay.
But one of the things that you like, this is something that I'm glad I caught beforehand, because yeah, they'll do that post-settlement. But one of these things this would have been really bad had it waited for post-settlement. Sure. Was the gutters. When we went out on the, they had an upper deck on the 4th floor. And I went out and I like looked over at the roof that was to the side, and the gutters were angled downward towards the house and not angled down to get the water away from the house. And I was like, that's not right. If it rains, this is going to pour directly straight into the house. And yeah, sure, they might have corrected it within the first month, but like at what expense of all of a sudden you got water coming in your house?
That's just good home maintenance too. That's a good point. If you do buy a new construction house, waiting a year to find all the defects might not be feasible. Yeah, if that thing does get loose, certainly like the garage door got loose.
Yeah, I'm not talking only about, the paint was a little chipped or needed whatever.
No, like real defects, you should contact the builder before the 1 year is up. But I hope this was helpful for everybody. I want to know, has anyone had a good or a bad experience with building their own house? Did you use an agent? Did you not? Mm-hmm. I'm interested to know, because this is something where we help multiple dozen people a year, but we probably only do about 10 to 15 new construction deals.
And I don't want this to all sound like I hate new construction. I just say beware.
Jen's getting sued after this episode. There's no doubt.
I love you, builders.
Yeah.
No, I'll say too. I just followed up with my clients 2 days ago. I said, I actually have somebody who's interested in a home that same builder is building. I said, you've been in the house for about like a year and a half now. Do you still like it? Is it something that you would recommend to somebody else to get before I do? Because I actually know somebody in it. I'd rather get your take on it now that you've lived in it. And they said, yeah, no, I really like it. And I said, cool. I feel better recommending that to somebody else.
Yeah, and just as an overarching comment, new construction can be a great option. Mm-hmm. There's no bidding wars.
That is a phenomenal benefit.
But you are going to pay It's like buying a new car. You're going to pay a premium.
I will say too, if you're planning on like getting that and then moving in about 2 years, I would feel free to disagree, but I'd say that might not be the best move. I'd say they don't appreciate as quickly. They will appreciate, but I
Yeah,
mean,
but when you buy something new construction, you're kind of baking in a premium, so you shouldn't expect the appreciation on those to occur the same way you would do on resale. Generally, markets are different all over the country, but that's how it is here in Philly. That you're buying like a premium.
and you're getting it like upgrading it to like your preferences, and those are things that.
And another reason that doesn't always track is because if you're looking for a massive amount of price appreciation, a lot of times those other buyers for that house can just go into the model home and build their own.
Yeah.
If construction isn't complete in those homes, you've got a lot of competition. You have a house just like yours that someone can build as long as they're willing to wait for it.
Yeah, but if you get in early on and they all get filled up, man, then you're in a pretty sweet spot.
And it's in a good location.
So
Absolutely.
another good thing to ask is when does the builder plan to complete the entire development by?
Yeah. We said this was going to be about a 15-minute episode. I think we were well over that.
But I think it was very valuable.
It was very valuable.
At the beginning of this, Seth said, "Oh, I'm so sick of talking about new construction." I said, "No, I don't think people are talking about new construction enough. It's why we're doing it."
Yeah. So this was one that was close to Jen's heart. I hope you guys found it helpful. Leave us in the comments. Let us know if you've done new construction, or if you've heard horror stories, you've had good experiences, bad experiences. Did you use an agent? Did you not?
Are you an inspector? Have you done things? What are the worst things that you've seen? I love those.
Oh, yeah.
And then, go check us out at Millennia Podcast, LLP. Follow us. We're fun.
LLNPP.
Yeah. If you're not sure, double.
Double.
All right.
On Instagram. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.